Howdy, everybody. That's just starting to kind of funnel in. We are live on the Where to Hunt podcast. This is the live broadcast edition. So if you're tuning in via Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, thanks for joining in. We'll get into the show here as soon as we get a couple people joining. Call out or announcement, I guess I should say. For those that watch the show weekly, monthly, or regularly or whatever, I switched up my scotch today to this scotch called Naked Grouse. So far, so good. I like the way it tastes. It's pretty smooth. It wasn't too expensive, and it's 43% alcohol by volume, so that's neat. Going on, if you notice on the left-hand side of your screen, Backwoods Grind Coffee Company, if you enter in the code W2H Podcast, you'll get 10% off. I always say it's a good place to start with trying their sampler packs. I think you can get a 3-pack or a 6-pack sampler, and that way you can try the different roasts or blends that they have. It's really good coffee. It's the energy that, it's the coffee that gives me the energy to do this show. That's why I start every single morning. And as you may or may not know, if you've been tuning in, I've tapered back on drinking the coffee during the show because I've had the last 2 times I did that, I was up till 3 in the morning. So use with caution. Anyway, getting into our guests on the show. On the line with me today, I have Alex Comstock with Whitetail DNA. What up, Alex?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It's going great. Every day doing a podcast, drinking scotch, talking to another hunter is a great day as far as I'm concerned. So how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. Yeah, just sitting here and enjoying a nice summer night, actually.
And you're in Minnesota, northern Minnesota?
Yeah, right up in northern Minnesota, right by Lake Superior.
Some might call that Minnesota.
Yeah, it's pretty cold about all the time.
About all the time. What's the temperature there now, man?
Well, right now it's not too bad. I think it's 65-ish probably. Yeah, it's shorts and t-shirt weather here.
That sounds real comfortable. Does that lake ever heat up there enough to dip in, or is it always a pretty bad idea to go into Superior?
Yeah, you got to be pretty bold to be going in. There are some days when we get the occasional, 85, 90-degree day. There's probably 1 or 2 days like that in the summer where it's tolerable to go jump in. But other than that, I couldn't tell you the last time I've been in it. So
yeah, if you ever want to have kids, maybe stay out of that lake.
Yeah.
All the time. So, all right, man. Well, northern Minnesota. You're obviously a whitetail hunter. Whitetail DNA is who you're with. Why don't we take a second to go ahead and just unpack and tell us who you are? Who is Alex? What do you love?
Yeah, so like you said, whitetails kind of run my life in a little bit of a way. I love the deer hunt and run, like you said, whitetaildna.com. I started that just as a blog on its own, just doing some writing. I wanted to get into the deer hunting industry in some form while I was in college, and I knew I wanted to not necessarily hunt for a living, but make hunting and content and somehow turn that into a living. I knew there were others doing it. And so when I was 21, I started Whitetail DNA and just started pretty much writing as much as I could. And that kind of led into getting into filming my hunts and photography, and that led into starting a YouTube channel and all that good stuff. And now 3 years later, I'm putting out as much content as I can. I'm hunting multiple states in a year, and then I've taken the photography and the filming that I learned through hunting and have been able to turn that into essentially my full-time job, not in the hunting world, but in the workplace doing, running my own company, doing photography and video work. And so it allows me more time to hunt, which is awesome. So that's kind of the Whitetail DNA and me 101, I guess you could say.
That's cool, man. I like the name Whitetail DNA, and I really like the logo. I do some graphic design on the side, and I do logo development, and your logo, I really actually appreciate that quite a bit. It's simplistic, but it works, and it's I like it.
Yeah,
the DNA strands going, man. Like, that's cool. It's a pretty obvious one, but it makes sense, and I like the way you did it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I got pretty lucky with that because actually my girlfriend's best friend, who I'm good friends with too, she is a graphic designer, was able to do that for me, and she definitely hit a home run on that one. Not especially with not knowing anything about deer hunting, she did pretty good.
Yeah, I was like, okay, deer antler, yeah, it's perfect. But I always have a soft spot for logos that I like, and I'll call it out as I see it. Anyway, I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And so, 21 out of college, you've been doing it for, you said 3 years, so that makes you about, what, 24, 25, somewhere in that range. And you've now taken the leap to kind of bridge the gap and go full-time with the freelance work for the media company. But does that give you a lot of time and opportunity then to kind of dig into the Whitetail DNA side of things?
I was thinking that it would, but to this point, I just went full-time on my own, fully self-employed in March. And so it's been, 5 months? And in that time frame, I think I've been more busy than when I had an actual day job. And I've had less time to dig into the Whitetail DNA stuff. But which is good for me, because taking another company and kind of taking it off the ground, it's been a challenge, but it's been good. And now as we jump into, I leave next week for my first hunting trip of the year. And it's nice because I can, even though I'm still busy, I can schedule things around it and make more time to get out and do some more hunting, and which will be nice. So I'm not strapped to the office till Friday at 5 p.m. like I was in years prior. If that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, you're just going to schedule and coordinate based on, if you're doing videography work, I'm not going to do any shoots for this amount of time. And the ones that I did, I'm going to have to get that post done and out to them, or set that good expectation. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Okay, so let's back up a second. Where do you do most of your hunting? Public land, private land? Do you do a lot of it in Minnesota? It sounds like you're going to be traveling.
Yeah, so most of my hunting occurs in Minnesota, North Dakota, Nebraska, and Wisconsin. And so I live pretty much on the Minnesota-Wisconsin border. So I've got some public land that I hunt in Minnesota, and then I have one small 8-acre piece of private that is really good to me. And then I hunt public over in Wisconsin. And then I hunt mostly all public in North Dakota. I had one private piece out there that will be up in the air this year because the landowner sold that. And then in Nebraska, I do hunt just private. But I would say in general, most of my hunting is on public land or either very small, by permission, pieces of private.
That's cool, man. And how do you, we had some fun talks, I think, with Zach Hoheisel a couple weeks ago about, he runs I think it's Growing Wild TV. He was talking about getting permission from private landowners, and his big nugget was that he would bring his daughter along with him, who's, cute and tiny. And he's like, yeah. I thought that was pretty clever. Are you?
Yeah, maybe I should start bringing my girlfriend.
Yeah, right. Hey, I don't know about that. That could lead to a totally different direction, but oh man, you probably have a ton of success as long as the wife isn't home. The key people you're not with. But how did you gain access to out of state? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, it's just door knocking, and I've written a number of pieces about it, but I think the biggest thing when gaining permission on private is I like to first pick an area, that I want to be in, and then I'll pick, if I'm going to go into a day trying to get permission on private, I don't want to have just one piece unless you kind of just stumble across something that's kind of a different story. But if you're planning something, I like to have a list of, 10 to 15 places to go, because, most people are going to say no, and you have to kind of be okay with that. But if you just keep going from landowner to landowner, door to door, and eventually someone will let you. That's kind of the way I do it. I like to, when I show up, and like there are certain things you can do when you show up to a landowner's house. Be dressed. I never want to be in camo. I never want to be not. I want not looking like I'm going.
That don't hunt. They'd be like, "Oh, who's this Neanderthal at my freaking door?" Right.
Right. Exactly. And you don't want to be dressed like you're going to church either. I mean, then they're going to think you're trying to sell them something. And they just want to
Jehovah's Witnesses are at the door, right? No, I'm not going to freaking answer.
Yeah. So I just try to be presentable and just be nice. And then if you if you have the opportunity to, especially if you're going out of state, can go somewhere in the spring and ask a shed hunt or a turkey hunt, because people are usually more often will let that happen. And then once you have any in, and then it's just about being, a good person, whether you offer some work or on the, if it's a farm or what have you. And that's just kind of the way I go about things with that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a fair trade-off, right? If it's a farm, you're going to do some work, and then you're like, okay, I can help you base some hail, or is that the right way to say that?
Right.
Hail some. Yeah. I think I said that backwards. Bale some hay, right?
Yeah, that'd be the way to go.
Struggling with that one for some reason right now. I don't know if the dyslexia is kicking up. That's cool, man. Like I think I was talking with Clint Casper actually a couple of weeks ago about how to hunt out of state. And, one of the things he had said, like, look, you could just bridge the gap and go straight to, like, I'm in Wisconsin, you want to hunt like a Montana elk or Colorado or something. Sure. Or you could start to kind of hunt your surrounding states to kind of branch out a little bit and kind of get used to what that process looks like for you and how you deal with it. It seems to be that you've kind of taken that approach a little bit as, okay, let me hunt the surrounding states. And it sounds like you're kind of branching out more.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I've done it. And I'll start branching out more and more in the future here. But yeah, it just took it was nice because North Dakota is where I went to college. So it kind of just made sense. And then Wisconsin is the bordering state. And then in Nebraska where I hunt, I've got family from there. So I have connections. So there it's easy. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's another good tip, actually. If you have if you have family in a different state, like if you're close with them or to some degree, that's a great place to start.
Right. And that's how, for me, like even in Nebraska, my cousin, he's got his dad's a police officer. And so my uncle, he's been a police officer for a long time. And, they just have a lot of connections and you start working that and, and all of a sudden they've got permission on a bunch of pieces. So
that's cool. So, okay, Whitetail DNA, let's shift back to that. You have on your site, let me switch my view on my screen here so folks can see what I'm looking at. If I go to your homepage, we have tactics, about, partners, resources, photography, etc. But if I go to tactics, you have a lot of great articles. You had the Hunting Beast Q&A session, a couple of those, it looks like. And then going past that, just your curation of content and what you seem to put out there. I've been paying, I wouldn't say close attention, but it's hard to not see it because it actually is valuable content. And, you and I were chatting offline a little bit that, look, it's kind of difficult to always be creating, but creating content that people actually give a shit about, right? How do you curate your content? Like, where do these ideas come from? Do you have like an Excel spreadsheet you throw things at to just, as you have ideas, you like catalog them and then try to flesh it out to see if it's going to be any good and just start writing? Because initially you had stated you just started writing a whole bunch. And that sounds to me a lot like kind of the Gary V content model. And I don't know if you follow him, but, I really
yeah.
See, yeah, I got to meet him back in April, and that's a lot of where, my recent motivation has come from with like, document over create and create and just 100 pieces a day, right? You're killing it, man. So I think I asked 10 questions in there, which is what I do. So, you need me to restate anything.
Well, first of all, I appreciate your kind words on that. That means a lot, just to know that there are people out there that take it for to be valuable. So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
And then as far as creating, like you said, I started out just writing as much as I could. Anything under the sun about deer, I wrote about. And the thing I've always tried to do is, and I feel like in the deer hunting industry, there are a lot of folks that create content that kind of come off as, I wouldn't say know-it-alls, but like it's their way. Like their way is the best way, and you have to do this to shoot big bucks, or you have to do X, Y, and Z. And I always wanted to stray away from that and curate content as I am learning, because there's still, I think you're learning about deer till the day you finish deer hunting, and there's so much to learn, and things that I learn I try to write about, and there are things that, even if I'm messing up, there was a deer that I was hunting out in North Dakota a few years ago, that a lot of people were following the story of, and there was this big deer named Kobe, and I was always making content about that deer, and I never got him, but that was such a learning process for me, and that's kind of how I try to kind of make my content, is to have people learn kind of along with me, if that makes sense.
Yep. That's a good way to.
And then as far as coming up, yeah, you can go ahead.
Oh, dude, I'm so terrible at interrupting. My wife always says, did the middle of my sentence interrupt the beginning of yours? So my apologies.
No problem.
The idea around learning, it's funny because as you say that, someone made a comment just a second ago about me wearing this shirt called the Okayest Hunter shirt. And so I got these goofy shirts made that say the Okayest Hunter. I commonly refer to myself as that, as a way to kind of disarm myself as being some sort of expert, because I'm not. And so that's me poking fun at it and self-deprecating a little bit, but stating like, look, I am the Okayest Hunter based on the fact that I'm always in a state of learning. I'm just trying to poke a little bit more fun at it. But realistically, like, I never said I'm an expert. I'm certainly not an expert. I don't even know what an expert looks like. I think we're all learning in perpetuity, or perpetual, whatever the other word is that I can't think of. Versus it's my way or no way. I have a hard time swallowing that pill. There's many ways, and there might be a way that is more effective than, but everyone has different goals in the woods. So maybe tell me more about how you've arrived at that conclusion yourself, because for a young man your age, doing what you're doing, that's a great perspective to have out of the box.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that and like coming up with the goals, and like, I don't know if this will straight up answer the question, but every single deer hunter out there is in a different situation, different scenario. So when I'm trying to make content, I'm always saying, if you're in this type of situation, then you might want to do X, Y, and Z. But if you're in this type, I try to reference different situations and then into goals. And so I might write an article about how to, I don't know, let's say it has something to do with trying to, kill a mature buck. And then I'll reference in there, this isn't what you have to do if you're a deer hunter, because if your goals are to just shoot just any deer, then there's no reason to be hiking as far back on a public piece as you can and going in there and scouting for, days in the spring, trying to locate a bed and then to come back and hunt that. And it's just not the same. And so, I don't know, it's kind of how I try to relate content to people, because like you said, everyone's in a different situation and everyone has different goals.
That's a good point. I think that's universal, right? And as deer hunters, we're really passionate, visceral people. At least I am. I found that most of us are. But if I were to think about the gym, right, and working out, everyone has different goals. Maybe someone wants to just be fit. Maybe someone wants to be healthy. Maybe someone wants to enter a bodybuilding competition. Maybe someone wants to get cut and lean, or someone wants to get swole, or whatever that looks like. Maybe someone's trying to transform their lives, and you never know where people are at in their journey to their own goals. And then additionally, what you ought to be doing at those different stages. That is the same for deer hunting. Right. Like you said, you could just be getting into it and killing a deer, whether it's a doe or a buck or a small buck or a big buck. Like, you'd be happy with anything to just simply fill a tag or see a deer even, versus some guys that have been doing it for 35 years. They want to get something that's mature and a challenge because they've been at it for so long. So you don't know where people are at in their journey. And that's a great approach to writing. I think most of the shows I produce here are through the lens of learning, or through the lens of I'm an idiot. Don't do what I do, kind of thing. But,
yeah,
I'm learning along the way, and everyone's got their different process. So it's fun to see people kind of follow you on your journey of learning.
Right, and that's exactly what I think. And I want people to be able to take in my content, whether they've been hunting for a long time and maybe they're trying to pick up something small that could help them, or someone who is brand new to hunting. And I want, all deer hunters to be able to come to my site and watch my videos and be able to take something away from it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, maybe so Whitetail DNA, you're killing it, dude, and you're doing a good job of getting that message out on social media. Are you going to trade shows and things like that too? Are you boothing there? Or are you going as like, media sponsor or something like that?
Yeah, I'd like media. So the only one that I go to is just ATA.
Okay. It's a big one. Yep. For industry.
Yeah. So
I went to that one 2017 or 16 or something like that. 16, I think. When it was in Kentucky, the last time I was in Kentucky. That's a big show. It's an intimidating show.
It is. Yeah, the first time I went, I was a little wide-eyed. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like, how am I even going to cover all this?
Yeah, there's a lot of people.
It's only so much time in a day. Well, let's switch gears to early season tactics. I think I've had a session about that recently, but it'll be fun to get your perspective because your finger's on the pulse. You're hunting different states and things like that. And in fact, it sounds like you're heading somewhere in the next week.
Yeah, so I'm headed to North Dakota on Tuesday next week, and the season opens there next Friday, which is August 30th. So it opens, pretty early, which is awesome. And heading out there, I mean, the biggest thing for me early season is just trying to find a buck on some type of pattern, and that's pretty common knowledge. I mean, it's it's easier said than done, I guess. But really, I think the toughest thing for an early season hunt, especially if someone's traveling, is just the time, because thankfully this year I can get out there a few days early and spend some more time behind the glass and really trying to find some bucks, doing something consistently. But for me, it's all about, especially in North Dakota, it's about having food sources near bedding, just because there isn't a lot of cover out there. So if I can find a well-used food source, at this time of year, it's typically a bean field near either a woodlot or deer bedding or some type of cattail slough, that usually is pretty good. And then for me out there, I found if I can find a good water source, that can be pretty awesome. I've got one spot in particular where I've got this small pond that sits right on the edge of this bean field, and that spot's just, the years where it's beans especially, it's killer, and it's beans this year, so I've got a high hopes for that spot this year.
And how much longer do we have till the beans start turning colors on us and going, bad for the deer?
Probably the mid to end of the first week of September would be my guess. It depends how dry it is too out there. I haven't been back out. Last time I was in North Dakota would have been the last week of July, so I'm not entirely sure. Hopefully when I get out there, everything's still green. That would be awesome.
Yeah, man, that would be great. Like you said, easier said than done to pattern them, but it seems like this is the time of year when they're going to be the most predictable. Plus, there'll be the least amount of hunting pressure, right? There's been zero up until the season opens, and even in the early season, like, it's pretty anemic anyways. It's still pretty hot out. Food is consistent. If it's beans, like, before it goes bad, you got a good shot at that. I'm not going to be out there because of, devil bugs, mosquitoes. I just can't stand them.
Yeah.
I got to try to pick my spots to avoid those things, man. They'll just ruin a hunt for me so quick, early season.
Yeah.
But
they can be brutal out there.
So you said you like to get some time behind glass. So based on where you're going in North Dakota, with it being a little bit more open, that's a pretty effective strategy out there, I suspect.
Yeah, it can be really good. I mean, there's a few different spots. I'll either take one or two different approaches and either just drive around, at night looking for, deer in fields and seeing if I can find a big buck, and then go from there and usually see if there's public nearby or if I can get permission on that property. Otherwise, the other tactic that I do is I've got I've hunted out in North Dakota since 2015 now, so I kind of have a core set of spots, based on crop rotations, and then there's spots where I can, get into the beans and sit and be 500-600 yards off of where I'm anticipating deer to be feeding, and and then if I can actually, because there's one thing to have a deer on trail camera, early season, whether it be over bait or water hole or corner of a field, but if you can actually watch him come out of the field, you can learn so much more and kind of come up with a better plan of exactly where you want to sit.
That's interesting. So really, it's like you're trying to find the buck that you're going to hunt, ideally, rather than, well, maybe if there's a few, you'd be like, okay, well, this is probably a really good spot. But it sounds like you're looking for a target buck.
Yeah, pretty much. And so it's not like you're only going to have one buck, or, I'm only getting it could change when I check trail cameras and then focus on one deer. But it's more about finding that buck first, kind of what you're saying, and then kind of making a game plan. And that's kind of what we do out in North Dakota anyway.
So you're spending a lot of time doing some digital scouting in addition to glassing. So you'll glass, okay, here's a couple bucks. Now let me zoom out literally and see, okay, are they on private? Where's the public border? Okay, where do I think he's going based on the terrain here? Are there some nearby spots that look like bedding, et cetera? And you're kind of breaking it down based on site and then going from there.
Yeah, exactly like that.
And do you have trail cams out there now?
Yep. So I go out there. I'm fortunate enough where I'm hunting in North Dakota is, only about 5 hours from where I live. And so I can run out there in the summer, and I did that at the end of July and got some spots set up with trail cameras. And so when I get out there, the first thing that I'll do when I get out there Tuesday is go through, check all my cameras, and then make kind of a game plan for the next couple of days of prep from that.
Sure. Well, then we'll have to keep an eye on your feed. I suspect if you got some good ones on there, you might be sharing that on social media.
Possibly. No, yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's some good ones to chase. So then, okay, let's take a step forward now. You've hypothetically gotten something good on your trail cams, you've glassed a little bit, maybe you've identified one of those on trail cams, and you have a good idea because you've been out there before on where you might want to put up and set up to a degree. What does that next kind of step look like in terms of it being early season? Like, how are you dealing with the mosquitoes? How are you staying cool? How are you dealing with, gutting your deer and dealing with the meat when you're out of state and transporting that carcass? I know in Wisconsin we have a lot of CWD, and transporting carcasses across state lines is kind of a big deal. Even for me to stay in Iowa and hunt in Wisconsin, if I were to bring it back to Iowa, I'd have to debone the meat.
Yep.
So
same way out there.
Is it okay? Have you had success out of? I guess I'll back up to my initial kind of question because I ran off too fast. But are you doing a hang-on stand based on the property that you're hunting? Do you what does your setup look like? How are you dealing with that, and how does that help you early season versus maybe a late season, or does that not change?
Sure. So out there, especially, we've got a few spots with court that we know are going to produce at some point, whether it's first week of season, a buck will show up after he changes home ranges in late September, October. So I've got, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 stands out there across various properties that I know I'm going to keep stands there. I'm going to hunt there. And then from there, because things are just, always changing, if I find a buck or come across a buck in one of these public spots that, I can't leave a stand up all year, or a spot that I just find a new buck, then I'll go in. I have a mobile hang-on stand, and I'll go in with this stand and sticks in my back and set up on them then.
Nice. So the hang-on stand with steps, that's the way I do it when I hunt out of a stand. Have you ever done any spot and stock hunting? Is that something you've done? Just leave the stand back and see if you can kind of pick and choose your spots on the ground? Ground and pound, I guess is what it's called.
No, I've never really done any. I mean, I've done some still hunting, but I've never done a true spot and stock, especially not out there.
Yeah,
it could be definitely effective out there, but that is not something I've put in my repertoire yet.
Those Whitetail Adrenaline guys, they do an amazing job of doing it, but even then taking a step further and capturing it on film the way that they do, I can't wrap my mind around.
That's pretty remarkable.
It's crazy, right?
I know.
In some of those states, is it North Dakota that's just are they? I don't know where they're at when it's so flat and open where there's nothing out there to conceal.
I know they do a lot in Kansas.
Maybe that's where it is. I'm geographically challenged, so it's I don't know where anything is. Luckily, I know where Minnesota is. Well, that's exciting though. The season's right around the corner. What are you wearing for gear? Because it's hot, for me, I want to cover up every piece of skin that's exposed that I possibly can to keep the mosquitoes at bay. But if it's still really hot out, it's just it's a struggle.
No, yeah, I'll still wear pants and long sleeve. I've just got some real light. I'll all Sitka, but it's just some light Sitka stuff. And, if typically I'm able just to walk slow enough where I can just wear it. But if it's really hot, if it's, 85, 90, even hotter, I'll wear literally just like a shorts and t-shirt on the way to the stand, and then bring like a garbage bag or something, and change at the tree. And there's not much else you can do when it's that hot. And I've got my thermocell with me, and a lot of extra whatever it is, butane, the liquid you put in it, and I don't even know what they're called, the blue pads you put in.
I don't know, right? Yeah. Oh shit, it turned white. I better put another one in, like now. Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you got a bunch of those, because your thermocell kicks off or runs out of juice, and you'll know right away. So
yeah, it doesn't seem to work great when you're walking.
No, when you're walking, I don't know, you're gonna get eaten up.
I try to turn it on when I go into the woods, so that way when I do get to where I'm going, it's pumping at that point,
Yeah.
Otherwise, you get there and it takes too long. You're like, I can't wait. This isn't working.
And the one nice thing about, it's not everywhere, about North Dakota where it's open enough, is it's usually pretty windy. On the days when it is windy, it kind of helps keep the bugs down a little bit. So on the days where it happens to not be windy, then it can just be horrendous.
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose with the wind, I've only really hunted Wisconsin, so I hunt, hardwoods and some bottoms and things like that where there's some marsh and swamp, which early season, I think I'm just going to have to stay away from that shit. The swamps, it's too much.
Yeah.
All the bugs,
it can be pretty brutal.
It was bad. I was like, this is impossible. Like, I couldn't imagine what would happen if I actually got a deer, because I don't know if I'd be able to gut it.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Once you shoot one and all that good stuff.
So how do you get it? So you actually do process it right there in the field?
So what I do, last year is a good example. So last year, out of all the years I've hunted out there, and I got me and a couple of good buddies that hunt out there together, and all the bucks that we had shot were either middle of the year, or late season. And last year was the first year we were actually able to have it all come together, and I was able to shoot a nice velvet 8-pointer on September 4th or something like that.
Velvet, that's awesome.
And then, yeah, it was pretty sweet. And after that, for me, I have a taxidermist out there in North Dakota because I can't transport back into Minnesota legally, and so I've kind of just shoot him some texts before the weekend, and I'll do the same thing this year, and just catching up, make sure he's in town, or if I were to shoot something and he wasn't in town, what's the plan? Just because for me, after you shoot one, I'm trying to get everything done as fast as possible, especially if it's hot. So like last year when I shot my buck, as soon as we found him, you get him gutted. We got him back to my buddy's place, and that night, we completely cut him up, got all the meat in cooler, and caped him out and everything that night. I don't think we were done till 2 a.m, just because it gets dark so late. And I shot him right at not last light, but right before last light, and get him got got the cape and the antler put in the freezer, and then brought it over to the taxidermist the next morning. And so if you kind of have a plan beforehand, kind of plan for the best case scenario.
Yeah, you should, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like the worst thing is if you shoot one and then go, oh shit, what now?
Yeah, you don't want to have that kind of decision in the back of your mind if you're drawn back, and you don't want to not take an opportunity because you haven't planned enough. So that's probably a really good point. One that I wouldn't have considered when I think about hunting out of state. I think about, let's scout. Where am I going to go? Do I need permission? Should I stay somewhere? What does that look like? What are the permits and licensing requirements, et cetera, et cetera. What I wouldn't have thought of is something as simple as transporting that carcass back. Maybe you do it and you never get caught, right? But I wouldn't want to F with that ever.
No, exactly.
So what you had just said about getting in touch with the taxidermist in the area, like that's a best case scenario. If I shoot the buck of a lifetime, I can't bring it back home, right? So and hopefully it's someone that you can get to know and trust too, because there's a lot of horror stories there. That's a big one, I think.
Right.
Because if you don't get a buck, then what? Like then it's kind of business as usual to a degree. But if you do, yeah, that's a big deal. That's a pretty big one, man. Have you written about that?
Yeah. I don't know that I've covered that actual topic, which is maybe something I should do in the next couple of days. So thanks for the idea.
Yeah, dude. Like it's something that okay, so you've done something interesting by taking the leap to whether it's in the hunting industry or not, like quitting your day job to do anything other than your day job. That's a leap, right? And so you've bridged that gap, and you're working on that now, and that's coming to fruition. You're busting your ass working more than you did before, but hopefully on something that you love, so it doesn't feel as bad as your day job.
Right.
But something to be said about hunting a different state. Like for some people, that's a bit of a leap. There's a lot of things to overcome there. So it's definitely, I don't mean to do the same topic twice to a degree, but I think it's a big topic that could really help a lot of people as long as we help them think through some of those things.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely intimidating because, there's a lot of things other than hunting that you got to put into play, lodging, where you're going to stay, planning. I mean, just getting out there, and yeah, there's a lot that you definitely got to plan for, which can be definitely intimidating to people, no doubt.
Yeah, and like I processed one of my deer in the past when I was a poor college kid and I didn't have any effing money at all, so literally every penny mattered. I was like, I got to cut this thing up myself. I suck at it. It took me 8 hours, and it was freezing. I lost all dexterity in my hands. The knives went all dull. Like it was just, quite honestly, it was a pretty miserable process. But I got it done, and I felt really proud of that. I packaged meat myself. It was a really great feeling to do that. Doing that in the heat in the field, or at some motel or wherever you're staying, that's another pretty big challenge, I think, if you've never done that. Because most of us deer hunters, I can't speak for everybody. Correct me if I'm wrong, people that are watching and listening. But gutting a deer is about as far as I've ever taken it, short of the one time I've processed my own.
Yeah, I was actually thinking I was going to try to put together some type of video this year doing that, because all my deer that I shoot, I just, to me, it's second nature, just cutting it up and getting it all packaged. And, between me and my girlfriend, we eat, 3 or 4 deer a year. And, just most of it's everything that we've done, unless I bring meat to after the fact to get, like sticks or brats or whatever made. But make a video about that and just kind of show how I'm taking it from the field after it's gutted to all the way to, it's packaged and in the freezer, essentially.
Yeah, I think Ronell has done a good job of that. Like I've been watching a lot of the Meat Eater, and he brings garbage bags, right? And so they're packing up these elk in the garbage bags.
Yeah.
So are you going to bring garbage bags with you when you go over that state boundary? Probably then.
Right.
And are you prepared to do all that? And then
Yeah,
you have
there's definitely a lot of ways.
Yeah, I was going to say, then do you have like a really nice cooler packed full of a bunch of ice to get it back home for that 5-hour drive if it's still hot out?
Yeah, so that's what I'm lucky enough to have. I've got a Yeti, and I've got there's actually, it's by Glacier. It's called a game bag, and it's huge, and you can just fit, you could fit a ton of meat in that. And so pack that with ice and head right home pretty much.
That's pretty cool. That's a cool concept. I'll have to take a look at that. So we just covered like a whole bunch of ground. So for everybody watching, there's apparently 6 of you at the moment. That fluctuates 5, 4, maybe. By the way, it's a call-in show. Feel free to call in if you want to participate in the conversation. But if there's any comments about things that you've had success with, if you're an out-of-state hunter, go ahead, raise your hand, give us some likes or whatever on the screen, and we can see those come through. But as far as early season goes, I think most people know, for me, my biggest thing is mosquitoes. So, Thermacell is a big one. I actually found a camouflage company that I don't know how legit this is or how effective it is, but apparently they put some sort of repellent and weave it into the fabric. So that's interesting. I forget what they're called right now. I do have some of their stuff that I've purchased. I've not put it to the test, so I'm not entirely sure how effective it actually is. but I think it was really designed for tick repellent, but apparently it works for mosquitoes too. I mean, ticks are just as bad too, right? I don't want to get Lyme disease, but between that and Thermacell and cover my skin, like that's probably my biggest concern. I'd rather be freezing cold than get hit by bugs.
It's like a toss-up for me because I've been in, and the fascinating thing to me about like North Dakota especially is season opens so early and it stays open till the last week of the end of the first week of January. And so I've shot a buck in North Dakota when it's 80 degrees, and I've shot a buck in North Dakota with the wind chill. It was negative 40. And so it's such a, I think I'd go with the hot just because I've experienced the worst of the worst with the cold.
Yeah, that's we had that polar vortex here in Wisconsin last winter, and it was like literally record-breaking temps of negative 50 degrees or something like that with the wind chill. I suppose there could be a case to be made about hunting in extreme cold.
Yeah, I when I had shot that buck, I watched him go down in the field, and it's the only time when I've seen a buck go down, I didn't go straight to him because I literally, in all of my late season hunting clothes, sprinted as quick as I could to my truck because I thought my feet were going to actually fall off, and I had to get warmed up before I could go grab my buck.
Dude, that's nuts. I had a situation in the Nicolet National Forest in Wisconsin one year where it was negative 15, but I had sat so long, and I was wearing these Mickey Mouse boots, those old World War II, rubber boots, and they keep your feet warm, but at some point I lost all dexterity in my toes and my hands, and I was like, how am I going to get down from my tree stand? Like, I actually waited too long to get down. It was miserable. Get back to the truck, and the key that we had for like our secondary key at the time, this is a long time ago, before like, whatever, key fobs and all that shit. It was like in this hideaway key thing, but it was frozen. It was like in a block of ice under the wheel well. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even get into the truck. My dad had to come get him out of his stand and come get me in the truck and crank the heat. And I was like, that was the coldest I've ever been in my life hunting. To that, I can remember it pretty vividly.
Yeah, that sounds pretty brutal.
Hey, you can't chew something if your fingers don't work.
Yeah, no kidding.
But, well, this is a good time to pivot. I think, I asked in the very beginning, as I do every guest, think about your most memorable hunt. To me, this is one of my favorite parts of the show. I get to sit back and hear you tell me, hopefully, a really cool story. So I'll wind you up and let you go on this one. If you can, share your most memorable hunt with the audience and I. That'd be great.
Yeah, so I think my most memorable hunt is actually a deer that I didn't shoot, and it's a deer that my really good friend Tyler shot. And the reason that I think this and consider it as my most memorable hunt is just because there were so many firsts in this, and I had just moved out to North Dakota, so it would have been 2015. And we, at that point when I moved out there, and I had moved out there for college, I thought I'd be coming back home to where I am in Minnesota to hunt all the time. And at that point I didn't realize North Dakota was as good as it is. And so I had still gone out and put up some trail cameras with, me and my buddy Tyler, and school started and everything, and we got into October, and I didn't check them. And so I went to check this one camera, and I brought my computer out with me, and I insert the SD card, and it's on this little piece of, I don't even know how big it is. It's not big. This little woodlot in kind of the middle of nowhere. And I throw in the SD card, and the first buck on it is a booner. And I was like, holy smokes. And I about dropped to the ground. I mean, I was shaking. At that point, it was the biggest deer I'd ever had camera photos of. I called Tyler and, freaking out. And so then I walked a mile back to my car, and I had everything with me for hunting, and I wasn't planning on hunting, and was like, all right, I'm going to hunt. And then walked another mile back to the public, set up my stand and hunted. And that night, I passed on 140-inch 10-pointer, which is the big, like, I wouldn't pass on that now, 5 years later, but I just had fresh in my mind, a ton of photos of this giant, and I was like, well, I'm going to shoot him. Didn't see him, and then a few days goes by, and we get just the perfect weather. I mean, it was October, mid-October, I think like the 23rd or something like that. And it was chilly, probably in the 40s with a slight rain. The only problem was me and Tyler both had class that day till pretty late, and I was all gung-ho on skipping class, and I skipped a lot of class in my time to hunt. And Tyler, he's an engineer, he's a little smarter than me. He's like, no, I can't skip. And I was like, dude, this is your one chance to shoot a booner. You're going to really go to class? And he ended up going, all right, good idea, skip class. So we skipped class. We go out to this stand or this property, set up another stand so we both can be hunting, and we're probably 500 yards from each other. Tyler's in his ladder stand. That's still one of our favorite spots to this day, on the corner of this little field. I'm in a stand that I had hung the first time I hunted it, about 500 yards up this tree row. And, here we go, it's time to hunt. And the night goes on, and I didn't see a single deer. And, I text Tyler probably half hour, right at sunset. You see anything? And he goes, yeah, like 3 small bucks and 8 does. And I was like, holy smokes, and I didn't see any deer, and we're just 100 yards apart. And then get to the point where it's the last light, nothing. I go lower my bow down, go to climb out of the stand, and my phone starts ringing. And I was like, no way. Why would he be calling me at, right now? And I see it say my answer my phone. And on the other line, the other end of the phone, Tyler, can't even get a word out. And I was like, dude, what's up? He's like, it just nothing. And I was like, did you shoot him? And all that comes out of his mouth is, he is so big. I was like, so did you get him? And he's like, I don't know. And the reaction was just, because I feel like when you shoot a deer yourself, you don't really even know what's going on, or it's not like, unless you film that you can watch back later, but you don't really know what you're doing in real time. You're just reacting, genuinely how you're reacting. And to be able to see his reaction and hear, and we ended up meeting, and I was like, all right, well, I'll meet you at the certain point where I got down and I met him, and we're in the middle of this field in the dark at this point, going over the shot. He can hardly talk, and he just kept saying how big he was. I'm like, well, how big? You know how someone doesn't they'll stick their hands up like a rack, oh, deer is this size. Well, he sticks his arms out as far as he can go. He's like, I don't know. He's like this, and he's like, let's go get him. And I was like, where'd you hit him? And he's like, I have no idea. I was like, okay, well, that's not good. So we're gonna go back to the truck. We'll head into town, go grab some food, and head back out. And just that whole time being with him, and it actually was his first buck with a bow, and just seeing his reaction. He wasn't able to eat any food, and I'm just thinking to myself, being in that situation and be able to watch him, it was awesome. When we come back to the property, at 9 at night, walk down there, get to the point of impact, and there's just blood everywhere. And I was like, dude. And the deer ran 60 yards, and we walked up on him, and it was to this point, the biggest deer I've seen in my life in person. I mean, just for a point of reference, he had it professionally, or scored for the record books, whatever it was, I think 182.
Holy
and
shit.
just an absolute giant. And just that whole night, the plan was put together, but we had to sit class, and then just even though we were sitting 500 yards apart, big experience that hunt together, we consider that our deer, even though he shot it, you know what I mean? And just because we did everything together, and just to see his reaction, and then everything, we had to drag it a mile through a muddy cornfield, and didn't get back to the truck till 2 a.m. And it just one of the most memorable days of hunting in my life, and something that I don't know, something like that will ever be replicated. So it was pretty cool.
It's incredible, man. It's funny because sometimes it feels like it's a really hard question to answer. what's your most memorable hunt? But then when you tell the story, it's pretty obvious as to, it sounds like not much could have actually competed with that. And it's cool that you weren't the one that technically shot the deer. This is the point that I try to illustrate with this, is that there's so much more to the hunt than that trophy. The trophy is the memory to me, and the adventure.
Yeah, I totally agree. And even though it was, a giant deer, it just everything that went into it was just unbelievable. And it was a pretty special day.
That's cool. What time of year was that again?
It would have been October 23rd of 2015.
Rock on. So we're getting into some rut activity almost, especially depending on where you're at.
Getting right there.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And it was really cool for Tyler just because with that, and then I ended up writing a story about it for North American Whitetail, and he's got that story framed in his room and stuff. And
that's epic.
It's pretty cool.
That's super cool. So what are your goals and aspirations? And if there's certain things that are getting cooked behind the scenes, don't fret. You don't got to tell me all that stuff. But where do you see Whitetail DNA in the next 5 to 10 years in your mind's eye in an ideal world?
I just want to keep it growing and keep bringing great content. And hopefully, as we progress over the years, I can take more time to spend on that. And the more that I can be making, with that financially, the more content I can get out there, and the better the content, and keep growing it. And hopefully, it gets to a point here someday where what I get to do full time and focus on, and that's really the ultimate goal.
That's good to go, man. And so how do you want people to come and find you? Where should they go? What do you hope that they do to take action with Whitetail DNA? Like, what are you looking for in terms of engagement, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, if you just go to whitetaildna.com, everything is there. The thing for me right now is I'm really trying to grow my YouTube channel. So there's links to the my YouTube channel. If you head there, and if you watch a video and like it, and subscribe, and that's big for me right now. I've taken a lot more time learning video production and just bringing quality video, not just hunting videos during season, but year round on everything under the sun, from how to film, how to shed hunting stuff, scouting, turkey hunting in the spring, and so that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through your page right now. It's funny because I was actually doing that in sync with what you were talking about with turkeys and such. That's pretty great. And it's cool. You can see the kind of progression of your, your post-production skills here at the outline of the green around like the different things like the deer heads in the basement and the vortex optics and things like that. I can see you're rocking the Whitetail DNA hat. This is good stuff. So hopefully those that were able to tune in to the live session today, the broadcast, really enjoyed what you had to say and valued the content that we put out together. And, this will live on in podcast land, as I call it, forever. And so anybody that's stumbled upon your stuff, please be sure to go and like Whitetail DNA, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, subscribe to those things, and start participating with that content. You're doing it for the right reasons. You're helping people learn, and you're letting people learn from your learning. Not sure many other ways I can use the word learning in one sentence, but that's what it's all about, man. And I appreciate your perspective and viewpoint on things. I'm excited to see where this goes for you, and I'm happy to hear that you're on your own, kind of out of the corporate world and doing it for yourself. That's pretty exciting for all of us to hear.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate having you on. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be on the show. I'm always humbled to have any guest on. Anytime I get any guest ever, I'm blown away that someone would take the time to talk to me. So I appreciate that so much. And, good luck this week that's coming up, man. I hope you have a lot of success. I'd love to share some of your footage and trail cam pictures and things like that, and follow kind of your journey as that goes on. So best of luck to you out there too.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate having me on, and thank you very much, and good luck to you this upcoming season as well.